One industry and one part of the world that's really at a crossroads right now is agriculture. We need to feed people. We may come to a time when we will have a decline in global population. When that happens, it may come from starvation. Until that happens, we got to find a way to feed people. Because if we can't find a way to feed people, we're going to have some real problems. And climate change does not appear to be making that any easier. So food security and global agriculture are a real great place to start talking about this morning. And to talk about that, I'd like to invite one of the pioneers in that field, one of the lead thought leaders in this, President of the Mississippi State University, Dr. Mark Keenum. Thank you.
All right. Dane, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank all of you for getting up and joining us here in this beautiful meal at MSU, this facility that we're so very proud of here on our campus. And as I'm in this building and thinking about narratives and communication, Dr. Ford, and how we communicate with others, you know, there are times that we encounter people and we have people say things to us and that startle us sometimes. And it's how we react to the unexpected can affect how we are going to be perceived and what kind of individual we are and what kind of leader we will be. It reminds me when we were having the ribbon cutting to dedicate this beautiful conference center just over 3 years ago. Governor Phil Bryant and a lot of dignitaries were here, big event. And as the proceedings went on and were winding down, this nice lady came up to me and she took me by my hands and holding them, and she looked up at me and she said, "Dr. Keenum," she was smiling really bright and big, "I've just got to tell you, I think you look so much better on TV than you do in person." I'll never forget that. So what do you say? I said, "Thank you." Well, you know, communication is important for the very reasons that Dane just mentioned. We are at a crossroads. We are at an agricultural new narrative, if you will, for our future, the future of humanity. And I've been blessed in my life to get a great education right here at Mississippi State. My background is in agricultural economics. I never dreamed when I was a student here that I would be engaged in many of the things that I've had the real pleasure to be involved in my life. I just wanted to get a job and maybe be a banker or something. That's what I was really hoping to do. But the good Lord had other ideas for my life. And I wound up being in Washington, working with Senator Thad Cochran on the U.S. Senate Committee for Agriculture, Forestry, and Nutrition, and then serving him as his chief of staff, and then answering the call to go to serve President George W. Bush as one of his undersecretaries of the Department of Agriculture. And when I was at USDA, I was the undersecretary for Farm and Foreign Agricultural Services, which I tell people I had the responsibility for all the domestic farm programs and all the international farm programs, which is pretty broad. And it required me to literally travel the world to represent our U.S. government, primarily in trade negotiations and trying to promote our U.S. agricultural exports and access global markets. But it introduced me to a lot of great leaders around the world in agriculture. In addition to promoting U.S. trade, I also had the responsibility to be over all of the USDA global agricultural humanitarian programs. Food for Progress, McGovern-Dole Child Feeding Program, which is a global program that are administered by USDA. And My point is, when I would travel, and particularly in developing countries, and see firsthand the impact of programs that are administered by the U.S. government in these developing countries that are absolutely saving human lives. Not changing lives, I'm talking about saving their lives. It pulls at your heartstrings. And you see people living in very challenging environments, very daunting, challenging places of the world. And all they can think about is where their next meal is coming from. When you boil it on down to survival of mankind, we've got to have food to eat to survive. And people get pretty desperate when they don't have something to eat. You see a lot of instability in nations around the world. A lot of it has to do with people who are hungry. Just basic fundamental necessities that we take for granted here in this country. We're so blessed to live in such an abundant nation as the United States. But when I came back here to Mississippi State, it's been hard to believe, over 10 years ago, and I started asking questions about our international programs, which Mississippi State has for decades been a leader in agricultural development globally. And due to austere state budget funding, tough decisions had to be made by my predecessors, and they abandoned our University International Center. Well, one of the first things that I did when I got back here was to re-engage this university in a global manner. We need to be involved internationally as a university. We have so much to offer, but we have also so much to gain for this institution to be engaged internationally, for our students, our faculty, and just our reputation and prestige of this institution. So we immediately engaged and reestablished our International Institute here on this campus. But I felt like that I needed to go and let people know we're back in the game. So one of the first things that I did in my first year here was to get on a plane and fly over to Rome, Italy. You say, well, that's a nice place to go visit. And it is. It is. But Rome is the home to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. It's also the home to the United Nations World Food Program. These are two huge organizations that are addressing global development in developing countries and global hunger. And it just happened that I got to be very good friends with the executive directors of both of those global organizations of the UN when I was undersecretary. But I went back there with a different hat on. It said Mississippi State University, and re-engaged with my good friends to see what ways we could partner with the United Nations as a university to provide assistance in their work in addressing global hunger, and maybe have formal partnerships. Long story short, we are now one of the few universities in the U.S. that is a formal partner with the Food and Agricultural Organization. We have a very strong partnership with the UN, and primarily in aquaculture and fish health through our unbelievable College of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Mark Lawrence, who leads that effort, is doing a remarkable job. We are the global center for fish health, is right here in Starkville, out at our College of Veterinary Medicine. And I went over to meet with my friend who was at the time, the director of the World Food Program, Josette Sharon. She was Undersecretary of State when I was Undersecretary of Agriculture, and we got to know one another and work with one another, traveled together on missions. But now she was serving at the time the director of the World Food Program, which is the humanitarian program for the UN that provides food and sustenance to starving people around the world. And I said, Josette, I'm here to let you know what my new role is and the capabilities of our outstanding research university and land grant. is there anything that we can do to partner with you or help you to serve the mission of the World Food Program? And she said, well, do you all have a nutrition program a department at Mississippi State? I said, we sure do. In fact, it's one of the finest in the nation. And she said, well, I may need your help. She said, have you ever heard of Olan? It's a company in India that's a global food company, and they do a lot of work in developing countries. And they've partnered with Costco. And Costco is one of the largest procurers of cashew nuts. I didn't know that. And she said through Olan, which is one of the major producers of cashew nuts, and oh, by the way, cashew nuts, when you pop one in your mouth, know that someone hand-shelled that nut. Cashew nuts are not machine shelled. Someone has personally hand-shelled your cashew nut. And they're all produced in India and in primarily East Africa. And usually when they say processed, they have these huge tents, and they may have hundreds or thousands of people, and that's all they're doing all day long is shelling cashew nuts. Well, in the course of shelling cashew nuts, you get a lot of little broken bits and pieces, which have very little value. And Olan/Costco wanted to donate what was equivalent to a mountain of cashew broken bits to the World Food Program so they could use in their feeding program. And Josette's like, what am I going to do with tons of broken bits of cashew nuts? Can your people at Mississippi State help develop a food product that we could use to maybe feed children? I said, absolutely. I had faith. So I come back home and tell our department head and our dean and what my task is, and can we go to work with them? And sure enough, they said, yes, we can. And a few weeks later, the general counsel of the World Food Program flies from Rome along with one of the top executives from Costco to Starkville to meet with our people here at Mississippi State. Long story short, our department with our researchers developed two food products. One that's like a granola bar, and one that looked kind of like you're familiar with the Payday candy bar, kind of like that. And they had to meet certain minerals and vitamins and nutrients. It had to have that balance. It had that mixture. It had to be in the product. It had to have a shelf life. And it had to taste good because they're primarily going to target children. And we developed those products that were used by the World Food Program to feed children in the Ivory Coast. We hosted in 2013 a global food summit here at Mississippi State. We had many dignitaries from around the world, one of which was the administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development, Raj Shah, Dr. Raj Shah. He came and was one of our speakers. And when he got here and I was with him, he said, I want to meet with your food science department, your nutrition department, who developed those products for the World Food Program. Can I go see them? And do they have any of those? I've heard so much about what you all have done. That's just one example of communication. Going and saying, here's what we're here prepared to do, listening to someone who has a need, bringing that knowledge back, communicating it to experts, and developing something that has meaning and impact and help solve a problem. Well, getting Mississippi State involved internationally is a passion for me, as you may can tell. And I got invited to serve on the Chicago Council. They have an Ag Advisory Board for international global development with the Chicago Council. And I got to re-engage with former secretaries of agriculture that I had worked with who were on that advisory council. And then one day out of the blue, I get a call from the Obama White House asking me if I would be interested interested in serving on a board that Congress had just created in the 2014 Farm Bill called the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. We call it FAR. Congress set up a foundation and gave this foundation $200 million for ag research focused on global food security. Think about it. No staff, no office. The bill said 15 people appointed by the president to manage $200 million to be matched with non-federal dollars for research, to go out and get partners to invest in ag research. So that 200, really $400 million. And I was honored to be invited to serve. And I'm now serving as chairman of that board, by the way. And the Farm Bill that just passed this past year in 2018 gave us another $185 million. It's a massive organization that we have created over the last few years. Well, I'm honored to serve, and we've done some really innovative work in partnering with universities and other entities, private foundations. The Gates Foundation is one of our biggest partners. We're doing work in soil health, photosynthesis, and if we can improve the plant's ability to take sunlight and carbon dioxide and be more efficient in its growth, it can be revolutionary for food production for this world. And we're involved in investing heavily in advancing photosynthesis efficiencies in plants. Well, let's see, about this time a year ago, I get another phone call from the White House. Only this time it's the Trump White House, asking me if I'd be interested in serving on another board, the Board for International Food and Agriculture Development. It's called BIFAD. It was created by Congress in 1975 to be an advisory board to the administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development. It's a very prestigious board. I've heard of BIFAD for many, many years. And oh, by the way, not just to be appointed, but would you serve as chairman of the board for BIFAD? So I agreed to do that. Someone asked me, well, you're a Trump appointee. Don't you have a hard time accepting being a Trump appointee? I said, well, I'm also an Obama appointee. Global food security, I don't view it as being a partisan issue. We're out to help people and save lives. And I don't see Republican or Democrat. I see humanity in that. And so I'm honored to do that. And it's not so much me, I'll just tell you, but it's every time I'm introduced, it's Mississippi State University. Mississippi State University. People are seeing our university engaged at some of the highest levels internationally in addressing issues of global hunger. And like I tell our students here, our future leaders in this world, and Dane is exactly right about the challenges of tomorrow, they're very daunting. Today we have 7.2 billion people that we share this world with today. And unfortunately, in this world today that we live in, just over 800 million people, that's almost 1 billion people on our planet today, are severely malnourished. And in our world today that we live in, unfortunately, we have millions, I want to say almost 10 million people every year perish for the simple reason they just couldn't get enough food to eat. And most of those people that are perishing are young children under the age of 5. How heartbreaking that is for us as human beings to have that going on in our world today, in this most modern era in the history of this planet. we have human beings that are dying because they just can't get enough food to put in their mouth. That's a real challenge for this world. And going all the way back to Adam and Eve, to today, 2019, it's taken all that time for us to populate this globe with 7.2 billion people. And yet, by the year 2050, this is just a little over 30 years from now, we're going to go from 7 billion people today to more than 10 billion people. In the span of the next 3 decades, we're going to add 3 billion new people will be at our global dinner table looking for something to eat. And we can't feed everybody today. How are we going to address this huge challenge, not 300 years from now or 3,000 years from now, 30 years from now? That's a pretty daunting challenge for this world that we live in. And how we do that while we're protecting our fragile environment and natural resources, understanding the issues of climate change that's going to continue to proliferate and be more of a challenge for us in our food production. These are major issues for huge universities, colleges to be addressing, foundations, governments to be focused on. In this university that we can all take great pride in is already one of the leading research universities in agriculture. We're ranked among the top 10 universities in this nation in agricultural research. We're going to continue to grow, enhance, expand our vision and enroll for this university to be a major player in helping to address these critical challenges. And I am an eternal optimist. I believe we will be able to feed the world. We will find innovations and technologies through research to do this. We have to. We have no choice. And it's going to be these young people that are on our campus studying, getting their education, being engaged in research, being in part of these internships with the United Nations and other organizations that we're putting Mississippi State students in right now today, exposing them to the challenges, hopefully inspiring them to want to be involved and help solve these problems. We'll get there. Technology will help us, research will get us there. And Dane was talking about, crossroads and where we'll be in 10 years. I saw something recently. The Institute of the Future gave a projection as far as careers and jobs by the year 2030, which is just over 10 years from now. And it's amazing because this institute says that by the year 2030, 85% of all the jobs in the year 2030 will be jobs that today don't exist. Now that's hard to get your mind around, isn't it? But like I tell young people today, especially young high school students who are about to go to college, and they're thinking about their life and their future, here in 2019, the class of 2019, Robert St. John has a son, Harrison, who is in the class of 2019, thinking about his life. He's a product of this 21st century. The most modern, advanced era in the history of the world is right here today. Just think of all the technologies that we have at our fingertips and things that we've seen just in the last 10 years alone in advances in technology. The things these young people are going to witness in this 21st century, I can't even put my mind around it. They're going to see so many amazing advances in science and medicine. Most of the young high school seniors can expect to live to see the 22nd century. They're going to see amazing advances in cures and terrible diseases and advances in health care that will extend their life expectancy, not just living, but having productive, active lives. And that's going to, again, address the global population issues even further as we get beyond 2050. Just think about past 2050, the population on this planet and how it's going to continue to proliferate. And, but I think about students in the class of 1919. Just like these students today, the students in 1919 were at the beginning of a new century. They'd been born at the beginning of a new century. They had also seen amazing advances in technology in their lifetime, because when they were born, man couldn't fly. And yet they're graduating high school and you've got airplanes, and this thing called a horseless carriage came about in their lifetime, which evolved into an automobile. Just think about the technologies that they witnessed in their lifetime up to that point as a senior in high school. And yet in 1919, they didn't even have radio. But by the time, if they had completed college, when they graduated college, the first radio broadcast had already started, and they could have had a whole career, many of them did, in radio, this new medium of communication that did not exist when they graduated high school. And of course, who could explain television to them in 1919? They didn't have antibiotics in 1919. Just think about the advent of that one development in medicine and how it changed and revolutionized healthcare, allowed us to do so many things in surgeries and procedures that didn't exist when these young people were in high school. And if you'd have told that class of 1919, by the time they were in their late 60s, they would witness men walking on the moon. Hard to get your mind around, wouldn't it, in 1919? That's like when we say 85% of the jobs in 2030 will be jobs that don't exist today, and we're going to see so many amazing things happen in a very short period of time. And it's incumbent on us as educators and researchers and motivators to inspire these young people to be involved and engaged and understand what their challenges of tomorrow are, because we're counting on them to be the leaders of tomorrow to help address and solve these many, many challenges of the future. And again, like I said, I'm an eternal optimist. We've got many challenges. I could talk all day about that from the food perspective, but I'm going to focus on what we're doing here at this university and universities like this to help address those problems. I think we're on the right path. Y'all are kind to let me come and share some thoughts with you this morning, Dr. Ford, to help kick off this new narrative festival, which is going to be exciting. Y'all picked a good time to do it.
Not busy.
Nothing much is going on around here this weekend. There's going to be a lot of proud Bulldogs here in Starkville this weekend. And we're proud that Robert St. John, my fraternity brother and dear friend, is here. You know, we're talking about hunger, and I'm not going to steal his thunder, but we have a lot of hunger right here in Mississippi. I would say about a quarter of our Mississippi citizens are hungry. A big portion of those are our children and our seniors. And this gentleman has got an unbelievable charitable organization that's helping to alleviate and address critical hunger right here in Mississippi. And for that, my dear friend, I congratulate you and thank you for what you're doing. Well, let's have a great day, a great weekend. Let's cheer our Bulldogs to victory. Thank y'all very much, and may God bless you. Oh, wow. Look at here. That's special. I like that.
That was put together by Dr. John Nicholson.
Yay.
And it's a speaker gift, so
You can never have too many cowbells.
there you go.
Well, thank y'all very much.
Thank you.